All right. So can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, and my name's Genevieve. I'm 27. I grew up in Philadelphia, and I moved to Phoenix in the early 2010s. Been here since, working on different campaigns and doing art, things like that.
Awesome. What brings you to Phoenix? Anything special?
Well, I know this is so cliche to say, but you don't have to shovel snow here, and that was definitely an attractive thing about living here. You can be outside pretty much year round, so it's very, very cool, very different from Philly.
Definitely. I grew up here, so I always wondered, I was always trying to escape Phoenix, and so it just baffled me when people moved here from other parts of the world where they actually had water and green and plants.
It was nice having a beach nearby, but I definitely prefer living here, I think.
Cool. So we were put in touch by an organizer over at Optional. Can you tell us a little bit more about your involvement with Optional and how you came to join that group and what they're about?
Yeah, definitely. So Optional, I had stumbled upon online I was just kind of surfing through the internet looking at different discussion boards for the things I was interested in. I think I came across them on Instagram. Alana and I kind of became mutual follows, and then after talking for a while, we had decided that it would be a good fit if I worked with Optional, just because we're both interested in lowering restrictions on people's access to birth control and making sure that abortion is also accessible for all communities. We have a lot of similar, moral drives, I guess, so to speak. So yeah, I really appreciate what I'm doing with them.
Awesome. So things have been a little bit difficult in terms of having gatherings and doing things in person. Are you guys still active even though most of the stuff is digital right now? How's that going?
Yeah, we are definitely trying to put together some events right now. We've, at our meetings over the past few months, we've been discussing doing like trivia nights or just summits, Q&As with people from different organizations. So yeah, we're definitely still working hard to bring people or, bring about that involvement from a digital platform, which is definitely a big hurdle. We're working it out, so.
Definitely. One of the nice things, though, I guess you could say about doing things virtually is the ostensible benefits for the environment, not having to use fossil fuels to travel long distances to meet up obviously helps cut down on emissions. So what do you think about that?
Yeah, absolutely. Doing things remotely has a lot of benefits. Obviously, like, for example, COVID is an unfortunate situation, but at the very least, I hope that businesses start to realize that people working at home, is easily accommodated for and a lot of times better for the companies and better for our environment.
I totally agree. Awesome. Okay, so how did you become involved or interested in this topic of, the environment and, to use your term that you used previously before this interview, reproductive responsibility? How did that come into play in your life?
I don't know if that's an official term. It's just what I said, but we can make it a term. That is, without getting on too much of a soapbox or getting too boring and wordy, I don't want children. I've never really been interested in wanting children. And whenever I've brought that up to, medical practitioners or things like that, or even just people in my personal life, I, like many people who are also in that same situation, it's always, well, why? Or you'll change your mind, or you'll this and you'll that. And I never really understood why it was such a stressor to other people, I guess, so to speak. I didn't understand why it was so important that I make another person, right? And so when I kind of was getting into trying to seek out community where more people felt the same way I did, like I used to be pretty active on Reddit's child-free community. I don't tend to frequent Reddit anymore. But some of those have overflowed into some of my Instagram followers, and I'm fairly sure Optional I definitely discovered the organization on probably one of my, afternoons shuffling through the tag, or they were in my suggested followers or something like that. So it was really by chance, which is funny, but I remember when I got onto their website, I was like, oh yeah, like this is exactly what I'm talking about. Like it's all interconnected. The fact that we as a community tend to make having a nuclear family the standard, I think the motivations for that go a lot deeper than just, and I don't think there's anything intrinsically wrong with wanting to nurture something, but I feel like the amount of pressure that people put on others who might otherwise have decided not to, it's never about what they want, right? It's about controlling other people or, from a larger standpoint, making more people to consume more. And all of those tie into the fact that we don't necessarily regard human growth the way that I believe that we should. Limited resources can't account for unlimited growth, essentially. So all of that to say, it really opened up this whole world of, wow, this is why people aren't having the conversation, and also why it's important to have the conversation of, everyone deserves to have access to reproductive health care, and everyone deserves to make the choices that are right for their health and for the planet and for their lives.
Makes sense.
And I think that the work Optional does really ties into that. Yeah.
Awesome. It sounds like there were other reasons beyond the environment that you never really planned to have children. Is that right?
Yeah, it's just something that, and it's not a malicious thing. It's just something like if somebody asked me if I wanted to be an actuary or something, like I would probably have the same reaction, like, no, like I'm good. But I definitely think that the pressure specifically to have biological children on people is very harmful.
Okay. And where do you think people are experiencing that pressure?
It comes from so many different places. I think that people's families, especially if you're from a bit of an older generation, having a big family is really important. I know humanity kind of started doing that in the Dark Ages when populations were really hard to uphold. And I think it is more of a dynastic mindset, I guess, than we need to have.
I like that. I like these terms you're coming up with. I think I'm going to have to hashtag some of that. Dynastic mindset. That's a good one. Okay.
You're welcome to. Thanks.
Okay, so what other reasons, apart from the resources, if any, are there that you would say are a reason not to continue growing the human population?
I think there's a lot of personal and also big picture reasons for that, right? Big picture, it's that the World Climate Agreement specifically says that we should be having less children than we are now. But as far as unrelated to the planet, I just feel that it would hold me down in my life, right? I really value my alone time. I value the time that I spend with my partner. I value being able to put time aside to, do my art or whatever I need to do. I appreciate that freedom. And while I understand that, a lot of the word that people use is selfish, I don't understand how it's selfish toward something that doesn't exist and won't exist, right?
Right. Yeah, I totally understand that perspective. I think there's definitely that label, but in some ways you could almost say the opposite is true. If you're doing something just to fulfill your own desires without regard for the challenges that the third party will face in their lifetime.
Exactly.
Because of your choices. And that can be, a less than conscientious way to conduct your affairs.
Definitely.
And moreover, you can use that freedom that you have I would say, to help better the world that we're in presently, rather than, adding potentially another liability, if you will, in the sense that it's another, having a child, as wonderful as, children are, it's another mouth to feed, and so on and so forth. But as far as your decision not to have children, is that something that's pretty much set in stone? Do you feel like it's something that could change one day?
Yeah, I definitely will not be having biological children. My partner doesn't want them either. It's not something that, when I think about my future and when I think about what I want to be doing, what will make me happy, it's that kids have just never really been a part of that for me.
Understandable. Alrighty. And then as far as the concern about potentially missing out on the experience of being a parent, I'm guessing that probably isn't something that is on your mind.
No, that doesn't bother me. I enjoy kids. I don't necessarily crave the company of kids, but I know that, probably my family members or my friends or whomever, I've never been without having kids tangentially in my life, which is kind of where I like to have them. I don't mind babysitting. I don't mind taking someone to, the fair, whatever. That's fine. I just like to come home and have my things where they were when I left,
Exactly. No, I totally understand. That makes sense. All right. So how about adoption? So for people who do want that parenting experience, what do you think about the concept or institution of adoption?
Yeah, I think that adoption should be more of a conversation that people have when they have the "are we having kids" conversation, which I'm really ignorant to that. I've never had that conversation, so I'm not sure how people tend to bring it up. And I think that people are more open to it now than, say, like 20, 30 years ago, just because of, like I had mentioned earlier, that sort of, this is my family, this is my dynasty mindset. Well, that can be your friends, that can be anybody, and that can especially be a child that's adopted into your family. Just because, you didn't make this child yourself doesn't make your relationship with them, in my opinion, it shouldn't make your relationship with them any less meaningful, right? You're still nurturing them and teaching them things and guiding them through life. And from what I understand, that's really what people want out of parenthood. And so, yeah, I think that people should be a little bit more open-minded about that, and especially considering that in the U.S. specifically, we have the highest maternal death rate of any developed nation, which is terrifying to me. So it's not always the fact that, you need to have a child that you have created yourselves if you want to be a parent. I think that people should have more discussions about that for sure.
Yeah, I think it's kind of a win-win for people who want that parenting experience but don't want to contribute to overpopulation, if you will, because on the one hand, they can have that with their adopted child, and on the other hand, they're helping someone who's already in need when they adopt a child versus adding another child to the picture.
Right. I feel like there's so many people in the world who are already extant who could use that energy. And like what I say is, I think that if you're able to provide a nurturing environment, that being contingent on the child being biologically yours, I feel like that's kind of like, well, yeah, I can do this, but only if this happens. And I think that maybe that's worth exploring.
Yeah, and it's interesting too, in terms of the capacity for affection toward something that you didn't physically birth. I think, humans, just look at our relationship with our pets. They're not even the same species. And some people, their pets are more important to them than their own family members. So I just think,
yes.
yeah, their own relatives.
I'm that cat lady.
I think if we are able to love, our pets to the degree that we do, surely we can love another human the same way without having to, give birth to that person. That's my thought.
Yeah, absolutely.
And since while we're on the topic of pets, you have some pets, don't you?
I do have pets. I have 2 cats, and then a husky mix. I love them so much. I would do anything for them. They're very cute. I don't want to sit here and rant about my pets. Yeah, they're awesome.
Yeah.
I love the presence that they have in the home, and I want them to have the longest, healthiest life possible. And yeah, I definitely, they're my family. I love them. They're the closest thing to kids that I plan on having. So
they're your fur babies?
Yes, I adore them.
Do they get along with each other well?
Yeah, most of the time they tend to spar as siblings do. But yeah.
They're a little more manageable than little humans in the house?
I would imagine. I've seen the photos of the markers and the everything. And I think the most I've come home to is like, a book being knocked off of the ledge or something. So it's, to me, yeah, definitely eons different.
Cool. So you have a partner. Is he pretty much on board then with this idea of not having children together, like biologically, or at all?
Yeah, he's super down to. He has also never particularly wanted kids. I think late high school, early college, I kind of was like, I'm not gonna date anybody unless I know that they're on the same page first, because it's kind of, it's disappointing when you get to know somebody and that's really what they want out of it, right? So I had kind of put up a little bit of like, vetting questions for people. But I met him at a job we were both working at, actually, and it was very natural. I still think he's, the coolest. We got along really well, and when I asked him if he wanted kids, he was just like, no. And I was just like, yes, this is great.
It was meant to be.
Yes, yeah. So that was never like a big source of stress in my relationship with him or anything. We were both kind of already there, which is awesome.